Thank you so much for the opportunity I have today. I want to be very brief and talk about the justification that I have. Of course, being a mental health professional, I am Penina Mugure Moria, a registered psychologist, and welcome to my YouTube channel and at Mugure Penina 5841. My phone number is 0722 512 162. Make sure you subscribe and you view my content. I want to justify the reasons why I feel the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health is partially to blame for the inferno, the Utumishi Academy fire tragedy. And the first point that I want to talk about is the adolescent brain. Adolescents are between 12 to 18 years, and being in that age bracket, their brain is not fully developed. There is a part of the brain known as the prefrontal cortex that is not fully developed, that matures at 24. And this means that the adolescents are not able, this part is the one that is responsible for decision making and problem solving. This means that when adolescents are faced with problems or issues, they are not able to decide well or solve the problems well. This means that they are entitled to guidance and counseling, and they are entitled to guidance and counseling from either their teachers, their parents, or guidance and counseling or psychological counselors. And the government, through the Ministry of Education, has not been able to provide that, because if they would be able to, if they are able to provide that, they would hire psychological counselors through the TSC program. They would have a budget for it and hire. Of course, there are diploma holders that are graduating from colleges and degrees in counseling and even psychology in universities every year. And these professionals are not employed. They are doing private practice mostly. So the TSC needs to consider that, because they need to help be able to prevent these issues from happening in these academies. The second reason I want to justify the ministries to blame is because of the parents. And during the elections, the IEBC receives a budget to do civic education, and diploma and graduate students are normally hired to be able to do the civic education to parents. And I don't know what makes the government think that after doing civic education to these parents of these children, and for them to be able to know how to vote, makes them to be effective parents. The same way they are not literate enough to be able to vote in the right ways is the same way that they are not literate enough to be able to parent in the right way. That is why we have a surge of street children in the streets, and we have a surge of criminal cases of students even in these academies and the like. And so the government needs to be responsible. The government needs to take a responsibility and be able to be serious enough. Government officials, you may be taking your children to the international schools, but who tells you that all those children that will go join that child of yours will be good, will be coming from effective parents? And that is why it is good to consider these mental health policies, that the adolescents are entitled to mental health, and be able to consider those budgets and be able to hire those professionals. And the third justification is on teachers. Teachers, during the Bachelor of Education or diplomas, they have an introduction to psychology, and that introduction does not equip them necessarily with skills to be able to counsel students that may have issues. And this means that the psychological counselors need to be involved to be able to do effective counseling that will be able to help these students to be able not to be the criminal tendencies, and to be able to do these things they're doing out of this world. Because now, like when it comes to family stress, it is not simply a stress, it is traumatic stress that causes psychological disturbance to these children. And so they need therapists, they need psychological counselors with skills, experience, and registered to be able to handle these, for us to have safe schools. And the third point I want to talk about justification is on government hospitals. And I want to talk about now the schools. When schools have an internal counselor, and the counselor may not be effective because they are internal, they can have, if counselors are in government hospital, they can be able to refer them to those counselors, because serious cases may need some referral. And so government hospitals need to hire psychologists and even counselors to be able to be in those hospitals to be a referral facility for these children, once the internal counselor is not able to be effective enough to this. And that is normally the way that the counseling works. That is not normally the way mental health works. When a mental health professional is not able to be effective to their client, they are required to refer to another mental health expert that may be effective to that specific client. And So the Ministry of Education, what I mean is the Ministry of Education needs to work with the Ministry of Health to be able to save our children. And government officials need to be responsible. And this blaming the principals and the teachers who do not necessarily, who are just have an introduction in psychology that may not even be equipped with enough skills to do the counseling, is something that is out of this world. It's something that is no, of course, they have a responsibility that they needed to have referred for the children for the therapy and all that. But it is not, it is, the ministries are putting them in a jeopardy whereby they are not providing these services in the government hospitals. They're not providing these services through the TSC by hiring these psychological counselors to be in those places. And I want to thank you so much for listening, and I hope I was brief enough, and I hope that I have been able to solve the confusion to whatever extent that I've been able to do it. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for watching for tuning in to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for subscribing. That helps me to be able to do mental health content. Thank you so much.